Hello and welcome to Electric City Sentai Denzicaster, your not terribly regularly scheduled look into the wonderful world of Tokusatsu. We're trying to get better. I'm your host, Mike, and this week I'm joined by...
I'm Josh, and I am your Topaz champion.
Oh, God. You got a belt now.
I do have a belt now, for the next year, in fact. And then I will relinquish it.
Then you will relinquish.
That is my right as Topaz champion.
How's that working out for you in our Power Rangers game?
Not well at all.
Yes, our Topaz champion. If you have not watched the Empyrean Throne, official t-shirts available over on redbubble.com/people/Geek Carolina. Josh is one of the players in our Power Rangers inspired game, Delta Squad, which is very loosely based on Power Rangers SPD. Episodes from our first, videos from our first episode of the game, that'll make sense as you watch it, are going up as we speak. And the only person the dice liked less than Josh was me. Lucky for them, because I'm the GM.
Yeah, we got a lot of bonus points out of that.
I don't remember what the final count was. I just know it was closer to 20 than 10.
Yeah, it was. I know it was more than 7, but less than 20.
Yes, something like that. So, folks, it's just me and Josh, and you know what that means. No, it is not Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. That's on the shelf behind us. We're done with that one. Although we're still getting hate for it. One of our most recent comments on a video was someone on our very first Johnny Sacco episode, which is still the most hated video on our channel, talking about how clueless we were. I believe the exact quote is, "These morons are clueless," with all caps. I don't remember what word with all caps, clueless or morons, but still.
Well, his love for Johnny Sacco runs deep.
Yes, it does. And like I said there, in case you're watching this one, I doubt you are because you think we're morons. But in case you're watching this episode, like I said there, go back and check out the rest of our Johnny Sacco episodes because the show grew on us, and one episode was not a fair test case for that series. So, speaking of shows that are going to grow on us, I think this one has already grown on Josh. We are watching episodes 3 and 4 today. We have watched of Spider-Man.
Yay! Wow!
There you go. I don't know if that's going to turn into a bit or not. But
if I have anything to say about it.
So, it's been a while since we talked about Spider-Man. Go back and take a look at where we look at episodes 1 and 2. The episodes we are checking out today, if I can find on here the episode list. Episode 3, Phantom Thief 001 versus Spider-Man. Episode 4, The Terrifying Half-Merman and Calling the Miracle Silver Thread. 70s Tokusatsu episode titles were really long. I discovered, even the early 80s, I discovered that when I was doing the reviews of Gavin and Scheider for Denzi Blitz. Those things get really, really long. They're also spoiler-filled, so I'm waiting to see how that develops as the series goes on. A little bit of background in case you haven't seen the first episode and let you know about Spider-Man. Spider-Man comes out in 1978. It is the only year that, since 1975, that there has not been a Super Sentai show on the air in Japan. This basically filled the Super Sentai slot for each year. It's where Super Sentai gets both the roll call from and the giant robots. Both come courtesy of Spider-Man. Was done in cooperation with Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics said, yes, you may use the Spider-Man character and likeness. And Toei said, awesome, because that's all we're going to use. We're going to get rid of his origin. We're going to get rid of Peter Parker. We're going to kind of have Mary Jane. And we're going to say the powers are from a space alien who happens to come from a planet called Spider. More on that later. We're not going to use any of the villains from the Spider-Man comic books. We're going to make up all of our own stuff. Officially, this is canon, part of the Marvel multiverse. Go and check out the comic book version, the original comic book that inspired the, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
Into the Spider-Verse, yeah.
That movie is inspired by a comic book storyline of the same title, I think, which includes the Toei Spider-Man.
I mean, it's a massive multi-issue crossover of every Spider-Man character you can think of, plus about half a dozen new ones that were never in a Spider-Man comic. They just made up for the crossover.
And not just comics, because the comic book version included like 60s the 60s cartoon Spider-Man, the 90s cartoon Spider-Man, Spider-Man Unlimited Spider-Man. So every cartoon version. Plus, I think it includes the American 70s TV Spider-Man, the Tokusatsu Spider-Man, Mangaverse Spider-Man is in it. I think some of the even the Spider-Man from the Hostess ads is in it. And I want to say they even snuck like Spider-Man from the Electric Company in it somewhere.
Also, Spider-Man from Marvel vs. Capcom is in it.
Oh, really?
As in the villain actually goes into a video game to kill him.
So there you go. So this show is, if you are a big Spider-Man fan and you're a Spider-Man purist, and it has to be Peter Parker or Miles Morales, or that, you probably want to stay the hell away. If you're just wanting to see what this thing's all about, though, or if you're a Tokusatsu nerd or Super Sentai fan,
I touched on this in the first 2 episodes we watched, but you can tell that the suit actors really went out of their way to actually capture the movement style of. So in that regard, he looks like Spider-Man. The way he moves, the way he poses, the way he flips around.
I will agree with you. From an action standpoint, this is the best live action version of Spider-Man just for movement. If you're talking about the actor in the suit, nothing that has been done since. Not the '70s Spider-Man TV show for damn sure. Not Tobey Maguire's version, not Andrew Garfield's version, not Spider-Man Homecoming, and I hate that I just suddenly blacked out on the actor's name. Who plays Spider-Man now? Glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, if
you
would have asked me at any other point.
This is one where you may feel free to rip us in the comment section for forgetting this guy's name. But none of them have ever nailed the look of Spider-Man in the costume, movement.
Tom Stopper.
It's not Stopper. It's Tom something, though.
Yeah.
You're right. It is Tom. But I don't think it's Stopper. If my wife opens the door because I hear her coming, I'll ask her. She'll know. But regardless, none of them hit all cylinders for every bit of movement like this guy does. The MCU Spider-Man comes close when he's like standing still.
Yeah.
But that's as close as any of them get. The bad guys in this show are your stock Super Sentai type villains. It is an army from somewhere, in this case outer space. They have their machine BIM monsters, BIM being short for bug-eyed monster. So they have their machine BIMs, and it's even capitalized. That's where they got it. In these 2 episodes, we get, in episode 3, it's Machine BIM Ginyochu, whose powers include eye flashes that cause hypnosis, pincer claw hands, super high jumping, he can change size, generate hurricane force winds, has a grappling hook in his mouth on a wire.
And also, he's pretty much a giant praying mantis.
More or less. And then episode 4 has the Merman, not to be confused with the He-Man villain of the same name. Though he does have the same colors.
And he has the similar, rebreather mask on his face.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm 95% certain Mattel never saw this show. Powers include swimming, you don't say, blades in each arm fin, which I will bet you money was inspired by Kamen Rider Amazon, even if they never admit it.
Oh, yeah.
Because Amazon predates this show by, I think, by about 4 years.
Okay.
The machine gas, which is this gas that comes out of his head and he should always lead off with, and size changing, which is just something all the BIM monsters can do. So we're not going to go too deep into the plot or anything like that. Likes and dislikes, things we enjoyed about this pair of episodes. I guess we will start with our episode with the Phantom Thief, or as I refer to him, not Venom, even though Venom had not yet been invented yet. I said that just because it was a solid black costume.
Phantom Thief 001,
yes.
In fact.
Yes. So, thoughts on that episode sort of in general?
I thought as far as like Tokusatsu villain plans, it was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Because, they captured a cat burglar, and then they used the flashing bug eye lights to brainwash him into thinking he is Spider-Man. And then Professor Monster, don't call him Dr. Monster.
It's not Doctor.
But then, and he pretty much put his head, you're Spider-Man, you can do anything, steal as much as you want, but make sure everyone knows that you're Spider-Man. And every place he broke into, and this guy becomes significantly flippier and more acrobatic when he's Spider-Man. And he scrawls in red paint on the wall, Spider-Man was here.
Yes. It is a pretty cool plot. It's not a stock, and I appreciate this, it's not a stock Toku plot. It's a stock superhero plot, which is discredit the hero. And I mean, you see that in everything, even today. You see that in The Flash and Arrow, and you've seen that in some of the Netflix shows. Things like
I mean, for Pete's sake, J. Jonah Jameson made a career out of it.
Also, not appearing in this
but he
series.
would be a fantastic fit for this episode.
He would have.
He's like, I told you he's a menace.
Yeah. all we need now is, oh my word, and I'm terrible at remembering actors' names today. Who played him in the Tobey Maguire movies? Went on to become Commissioner Gordon.
Crap.
We're just going to forget all the actors' names.
Yeah, because
I'm about to start looking them up in a minute. But wow, we're going to lose our geek cards on account of this episode.
No, I love this actor. He was in Oz, and he was
J. Jonah Jameson, actor. Give me something here.
J.K. Simmons. Yes.
Okay.
Boom.
Who also did the voice of him in Ultimate Spider-Man, come to find out.
And I believe he does the voice for him in the Spider-Man PlayStation 4 game.
Tom Holland.
Yep.
That's the Spider-Verse one.
Yeah.
Okay. We're saving it. So yeah, I like the basic plot of the episode. That works out really, really well. I do think it's interesting that they're brainwashing someone into being the weapon they're going to use to discredit Spider-Man. Instead of having the monster act like Spider-Man, they find someone that can act like Spider-Man, which is very different, I think, from a lot of Toku plots. A lot of times the monster would shapeshift or something. So
no, I mean, I've seen it before where, like, they might use brainwashed citizens to be, like, stumbling blocks for the heroes.
Yeah.
And another thing I liked about this was just that even though, like, he had this reps being Phantom Thief 1, yet when Spider-Man finally catches him, and he actually reveals, like, his reasoning for being a Phantom Thief is that because he's upset, he wants to be an acrobat, and he wants to buy a circus so he can... Because Phantom Thief #1's all about the kids, folks.
Yeah.
He just wants to give back to the community. And
there you go.
Spider-Man's like, you're a moron. You can't do that. How do you think the kids are going to react when they find out that you paid for your circus with crime?
Now, another thing that I do enjoy about this episode, I've got to say, is I like the costume for Phantom Thief 1 because, and you figure, I think we've got enough common sense to realize it was the limitations of 1970s Japanese television that did this. But he looks like a dude that just made the costume at home because it's a ski mask or a head mask with eyes holes cut out of it almost hastily.
And he's got a headlamp on.
He's got a headlamp on. It looks like a costume he cobbled together. If that same thing had been done today, they would have made it look way too slick and way more advanced than it should have. So this is a case where I think the age of the show and the limitations they have played into their favor. Is there anything about the episode that just really stood out at you as I really, really love this?
Like I said, this one, I mean, nothing that I inherently loved about it, but I mean, it was a good, solid episode.
Okay.
I enjoy the, and like I still enjoy when he goes, Marveler, and he summons the effectively the giant mech conveyance device.
Well, it is the mech.
Okay.
Like, it's a spaceship that transforms into a giant robot. Why they have different names, I don't know. I don't know why the ship is Marveler, and then when it turns into the robot, it's Leopardon. But, well, I do know, but because Marveler is product placement for Marvel Comics. But anyway, I don't know why they call it Leopardon. That's always the thing that always confused me. Why in the hell do they call it Leopardon? Because when it transforms, there's nothing about it that looks like a cat. While it's Marveler, it has like this cat-like looking head.
Yeah, I think because I did think it looks kind of like a leopard. like with the mouth and like the very feline appearance of the head. I mean,
okay, it looks more like it before it transforms.
Total transparency. I don't know, folks, but I mean that's all I.
This is what you're coming
that's
up with.
What I'm. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, that's part of the fun of this is trying to figure out what in the world were they thinking. Because to me it looks more cat-like when it's the spaceship than when it's the giant robot. But that's just me. We also haven't hit the episodes yet where the giant robot. I'm checking to see. I don't remember what episode number it is. We haven't hit the episode where the robot prop got stolen yet.
Oh, dear.
Because there will be a point in the series. There's going to be a point in the series we know that basically when he summons Leopardon, it's going to consist of here's the change stock footage. He's going to call for sword vigor. He's going to throw the sword and kill the monster. There's not going to be any more monster fights when he grows giant because somebody, I don't know if it was misplaced or stolen, but that giant robot costume went AWOL. Oh, so at some point we're gonna reach Power Rangers season 2 levels of monster fights in the giant robot, which anyone that's seen the early season 2 giant robot fights with the Thunder Megazord, those were horrible. They shot all the fights in Japan specifically for Power Rangers using the original Megazord suit.
Okay.
And the decision to have them get the Thunder Megazord like at the very beginning of the series didn't happen until after all that footage had been shot.
Oh wow.
So suddenly they had to go through, and you can freeze frame shots where they do the Thunder Megazord final attack. It's stock footage from Die Ranger. And when it cuts to the monster getting hit, if you freeze frame it, you'll see the original Megazord sword hit him instead of the Die Ranger sword. It's horrible editing. But they did what they had to do. They learned from Spider-Man. Anything in this episode that just you didn't care for?
Like the first time you see Phantom Thief, where he's very slowly rappelling down the side of the building. He jumps in, and then immediately the lights turn on, and there are like about a dozen cops in the building.
I did think when I was like, and this is the guy they're recruiting? I think my exact words I said it. I think I channeled CinemaSins for a second. I was like, and roll credits. We're done.
Yeah, actually, then I was just like, yeah. Tune in next week on Spider-Man.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I didn't care for out of the episode was the monster of the week. His primary thing in the entire episode, other than getting stabbed in the chest with a sword in the giant monster fight, his primary role in the episode is basically to be the hypnotic device. And we know the flashing lights is how he does that. Mm-hmm. He hits Spider-Man with the flashing lights repeatedly, and there is not even an attempt to explain why he doesn't hypnotize Spider-Man.
Well, they do it the last time because remember, I
must have missed this.
Oh no, that's when you were out of the room.
Okay,
yeah,
I had to step out of the room.
Basically, yeah, like the last time because they're outside and he goes, "Ha ha! I was waiting on this because with the sun out, your flashing lights still won't blind me." Literally, what Spider-Man says. And I'm like, the lights are still going to be bright.
Well, but they never attempt to explain why those lights don't hypnotize Spider-Man. That was my whole beef. You can give me 1,000 reasons why they don't actually blind him. I'll buy that it's just something in the lenses of the mask, but there's nothing that tells you why that pattern doesn't hypnotize him. I think if they had just thrown in a throwaway line, and this amount of thinking did not go into shows back then. But I think if they threw in just a little line of something along the lines of the blood from Planet Spider has made him immune to it.
Yeah.
Or something that simple. He can't be hypnotized.
I mean, that's what they use for all the other super stuff that he has is the blood of Planet Spider.
So, overall, though, fun episode. And I do like the monster designs as a whole so far.
Mm-hmm. So one last thing, there isn't like at the very end. He's like Spider-Man is vindicated, but he can't tell anyone about it.
Yeah,
basically, he's like, the damage has been done, folks. I mean, he's not going to be robbing. Obviously, Spider-Man won't be robbing any more buildings, but as far as public opinion goes, is he's still a menace and a thief.
Which I do appreciate that they are incorporating sort of spiritual aspects of the Spider-Man comic book into the TV show. In the original Spider-Man comic books, he was looked at as a villain, a criminal mastermind, a thief, a menace. all thanks to J. Jonah Jameson for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't yet your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So the fact that, in essence, the plan ultimately works, we do make Spider-Man thought of as a menace before the episode is over.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question will become, do they remember that in future episodes? The next episode has the Merman in it, and this is basically a we got to kill Spider-Man story. That's the bulk of it.
I have to say though, how it starts though, where the merman, like there's this couple kayaking like in a pond, and then the merman pops up and just straight up just drowns the woman in the boat, like holds her head under what we. Pretty brutal stuff for a tokusatsu show.
The spirit of Jason Voorhees was strong at the beginning of this, where if anyone that's seen the ending of the original Friday the 13th, watch me spoil a movie that's ever how many years old. The murderer in the original one's not Jason, but Jason shows up at the very end, springing up out of the water at Crystal Lake, grabbing our heroic female, dragging her in the water, and presumably drowning her before she wakes up and realizes it's all a dream. No, Merman pops up out of the water, flips the boat, grabs the lady, and literally drowns her. You said the bubbles stop. So, yeah, that's a brutal opening for an introduction to this bad guy. You mentioned a trope that you said it's far more common. I think it's more common than what even I think of it as, because it's not a common tokusatsu trope.
It's basic. The general premise of this is that the Professor Monster, actually takes he has a bunch of his scientist minions. I mean, they still got to wear the masks.
Yes.
Crunch numbers in a supercomputer to punch in all the stuff that Spider-Man does to basically print out the Book of Spider-Man's Fate.
Yes.
Which is a book that says that he can predict this plan will not fail because I can predict his actions and can plan for it, and once Spider-Man knows that, he will be crippled with indecision. That's a trope, very much a trope, especially in manga and anime, of a foolproof book or a computer that basically can predict the future so accurately that there is no way that the heroes can do anything but basically fall into this trap, because they can't stop it, they can't cancel it.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times in tokusatsu, but not to the point that I would call it tropish. Mm-hmm. Then again, it could just be that I have such a massive sample size of tokusatsu that I've watched over the years. Maybe it does happen more often than I'm thinking it does. But it's not something I see a lot. But it strikes me as a very early very late 70s, early 80s storyline to pull, because computers are state-of-the-art technology, and thinking that they will solve all your ills and whatnot, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the basics behind the story. What struck me so much out of this episode is the sheer violence of this episode.
Oh no, I mean, it's like Merman he's drowning people, he's slicing people up with his arm blades, and just and then also the fact that, like, Spider-Man, I mean, he is legitimately worried about this Book of Destinies, and he actually says, well, if I just stay here, then it'll change and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But also at the beginning of it, he has a premonition, I guess. He has a he has a nightmare about his impending death by the Merman.
Yeah. And before all is said and done, because what I think Professor Monster interprets as, the plan is working just as the book said it would, Spider-Man is interpreting as, my nightmare is coming true.
Yeah.
And so he is basically crippled by the idea that this dream is going to happen. Again, let's chalk this up to, he's got blood from Planet Spider running through his veins. And my thought by the end of the episode was sort of watching that play out. I ultimately did not know what to think about it, truth be told, because it felt, I don't want to say non-factorish by the time all was said and done, but the overwhelming thing that I took away from it was just the violence, and at certain points the stupidity of Professor Monster, because this is what got me. They're in they capture Spider-Man. Okay, they got him dead to rights.
Yep, they hit him with the gas. They knock him out. They trap him in a steel cage with Merman.
Well, before they reveal that Merman's even in the cage, right?
Yeah,
you got him dead to rights. Shoot him. this is one of those things where if you stop and start analyzing these things too much, I'm going into Sam mode. I'm thinking too much about it.
And I mean, even Professor Monster's second in command actually refers to the fight between Merman and Spider-Man as a death match.
Yes. They're like, okay, well, we're going to send Merman in there. We're going to have a death match. They ring a bell and everything. And it gets a little Spot Monkey-ish.
But that's okay. I like Spot Monkey stuff.
I'm not a huge fan. Rip Rogers and Jim Cornette would have hated it. There are a number of Young Bucks fans out there I think would find it perfectly acceptable. There's a lot of flippy shit involved.
Which is impressive because it's not a really big cage.
No.
Which, I mean, I think that's kind of the point, is that they're trying to just limit his maneuverability, limit his arsenal.
And they get that across very well, that he is that agile and so on. In that, with the whole, they've limited the cage and yet they still can't necessarily catch him. One of the things I really liked about this, though, in Super Sentai and in Kamen Rider and all this other stuff, the costumes they wear are armor, and that they are supposed to legitimately be armor. Mm-hmm. So very rarely, if ever, do you see the costume get damaged. Typically, if one of them is going to get damaged somehow, like the helmet gets cracked or something. Not an option here because Spider-Man doesn't have a helmet. But you almost never see a relatively mundane weapon damage the suit. Here, the Merman's arm blade, which is portrayed to be, frankly, not much more than just a blade.
Yeah, there's no like special space age materials or anything.
But that blade actually cuts Spider-Man's chest and actually cuts the costume.
I will actually give that the suit actor for Spider-Man did a really good job in his movements. Like, he was really portraying the fact that Spider-Man was beat down, he was wounded, he was exhausted.
And when he does manage to outsmart Merman and escape the cage, which means he went over, by the way, folks. You escape the cage, you win.
He actually, where at this point, like, again, Professor Monster's taunting him, saying, like, that blade can cut through anything. And Spider-Man's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And then, of course, he does a little, like, springboard into a roll, ducks, and then causes Merman to cut the bars open. And then he jumps out the window, and Bob's your uncle, Spider-Man escapes.
Yes. So. But they do such a good job of getting across the threat to Spider-Man up to that point that you really do kind of get the impression, no, Spider-Man barely escaped with his life. They get that across in that scene. I love the fight scene at the end of the episode, the human-sized fight scene, where they're fighting atop the waterfall.
Oh, yeah.
Again, one of the reasons I like about it, or one of the things I really liked is, you do get a sense that Spider-Man's in danger. He tries to drown Spider-Man, call back to the beginning of the episode, but he's fighting Merman on Merman's turf.
And it's also, he actually realizes, oh no, this is the moment in my dream where I died. Mm-hmm. And he actually beseeches Garia, his teacher. Yes. And he's like, Garia, help me! And you see the silvery ray from the planet Spider.
Yes, a spider's thread comes from the sky, and he grasps it in his hand, and he is saved. And then he wakes up and realizes that apparently that machine gas is laced with the good shit, because all it was actually a vine from a tree he managed to grab.
And I was like, boo!
Mm-hmm. There was a part of me that was kind of hoping, are they really going to do this and say that somehow Garia's spirit is helping him? And they may yet. They could say something like it is Garia's spirit.
And actually, it wouldn't... If in Spider-Man comic, it would not necessarily be out of... I wouldn't really fault him for it, because especially in the J. Michael Straczynski Spider-Man era, he actually did have, like, totemic animal spirits that actually would have helped him, because he was the inheritor of the spider totem.
Okay. Josh has a far more well-rounded and extensive comic book knowledge than I have, so it's going to be fun going through this series with Josh.
Like I said, I mean, I'm not like a Spider-Man super fan by any means, but I am a fan of the character, and even that, I mean, I still enjoy this series. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it's dated, but
Well, yeah,
but then take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But
is there anything about this episode that you just kind of sat there and went,
really only one thing. At the beginning of that fight that leads to the waterfall, they're on like a really almost desert area, and then Spider-Man drop kicks the merman, and then they're suddenly in a forest.
Yeah, he hit him so hard they flew out of the desert and into a forest.
Out of the rock quarry.
Yeah. Well, actually, the rock quarry is forest adjacent.
Oh, yes.
If I've learned nothing else watching late 70s, early 80s Super Sentai, it's that there's actually a forest just off screen.
There's
you can't really see it
the
because
general
that's where they
area
set the cameras up.
Is abandoned factory,
Yes.
rock quarry, forest.
I want some. Okay, if anybody out there in our viewing audience has artistic talent, I need a map. Draw this out for me of the rock quarry in relationship to the forest and the abandoned factory, because I'm pretty sure they're all within like the same 5 or 6 acres, if that. So, the only thing that I really looked at this episode and just didn't care for was I hate it when I have developed a hatred of the Bondian 60s Batman death traps. I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm kind of like, no, if the villain's got him dead to rights, then there's got to be something else that happens. And in this episode, no, Professor Monster has Spider-Man dead to rights the second he has him in the cage. So I would have preferred to have seen something else somehow intervene. Like maybe that would have, to me, have been the better moment for him to please Garia, get me the hell out of this.
Well, it's also that they just established that the gas from Merman knocks him completely unconscious. It would be very easy just to have him constantly on the gas while he's in the cage, and they could have done anything they wanted to him.
So there's that.
Then also, Professor Monster has this really silly moment where at the end of it he's just like, curses! And he throws the book down.
Yes, he has his Skeletor Megatron Dr. Claw moment.
I'll get you next time, Spider-Man.
Final thoughts on this pair of episodes and what we're looking forward to coming up.
I am, like I said, I just really want to see what the next couple monsters are. I'd like to see more I'd like to see more of like human super villains, and I don't know if we're gonna get that.
I'm 95% certain.
Well, I mean, definitely not the Marvel super villains, but
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just scanning through stuff on the wiki page just to get an idea of what kind of monsters we're coming up on. Okay, we'll say this. Apparently, we may get some actual human-sized stuff before all is said and done. Although I did see the phrase "machine gun in the butt" at one point with one of the monsters, and I have no idea what that's going to mean. I'm hoping that it's basically as literal as it sounds. But as in he has a machine gun mounted on the butt somehow. The next couple episodes, just to let everybody know what we're going to be seeing coming up. Episode 5 is Crash Machine GP 7, The Oath Siblings. So GP07, by the way, is Spider-Man's car, the Spider Machine. It's not as bad as Zubat's car, but it's up there. Well, I will take. You know what? I'm going to take that back. For 70s and into the early 80s Tokusatsu cars, it's actually really, really cool. Because I've seen the cars from from Jacker and Go Ranger and all this stuff. Those are horrendous.
Well, that is one thing about this, though, is that Spider-Man's like, my crusade is lonely, and I cannot be seen. It must be secret. Yet he drives in this garish Spider Machine wearing the Spider-Man suit.
Well, what else is he going to drive it wearing?
I mean, maybe get a sunroof and tint the windows.
What windows?
Oh, fair enough.
If it rains, he's screwed. And then episode 7 is Fearful Hit Tune, Song Dancing Murder Rock. So that's what we've got.
Actually, I'm kind of looking forward to that because I definitely enjoy the 70s-tastic score of this show.
Yeah, the music is pretty fun.
A lot of interesting choice of marimba use in this soundtrack.
Our next two monsters are Machine Bim Chojinjo, which apparently has a lot of guns, and then Machine Bim Robacular.
Robacular.
That sounds straight up like a Johnny Sacco robot. I'm kind of scared.
I was actually going to say it sounds like a really expensive pharmaceutical.
Robecular?
Robecular.
Perhaps.
Side effects of robecular include dizzy spells, lighthead, and night sweat.
And machine gun in the butt.
And butt machine guns.
Yes. Anyway, I'm looking forward to just seeing where the show goes. This is... I always like watching old tokusatsu, and I like seeing where a lot of the Super Sentai tropes originate, and more Super Sentai tropes originate in Spider-Man than you would think.
Yeah, actually, one thing I do like about the older tokusatsu, because as far as the level of special effects of the era is, they got by a whole lot more on just sheer imagination and creativity. Like, they had to be creative because just resource-wise, they didn't have a lot, which is really neat to watch.
Well, I always harken back to Rider 1. In Kamen Rider 1, the very, very early episodes of that series, if they destroy like one of the foot soldiers, and the foot soldier has... what happens to the body? And they have the foot soldier go on the ground, and they want to do some sort of effect. Well, nowadays, we would just have a CG explosion. Well, back then, it would cut, and you would see a slow dissolve of basically just them fading from the body line there to what amounts to soap bubbles in the shape of the body, and then the wind would blow the soap bubbles away. Things like that.
And again, harkening back to Johnny Sacco, I mean, their miniature work as far as vehicle explosion was really solid. Yeah. Like, I mean, very effective.
Yeah. So it's always fun to see the practical effects at play, especially... almost, I think, when you get to the late 70s and into the early to mid 80s is when it gets really, really, really to its best, because the technology had not gotten so far where they could... I don't mean cheat when I say cheat, but they weren't so far advanced that they had newer, easier ways of doing everything, but they had polished what they had started.
And
before.
Also, I have to say one thing about Spider-Man is they actually have a dude in a suit like climbing a building, as opposed to Batman, where they just walked on the ground and turned it sideways.
Which I'm not convinced there's not a... I mean, I'm sure there's a good deal of compositing involved.
But I appreciate they actually made the effort to actually make it look like he's clinging to the side of a high-rise building.
It's a vertical surface. There's a wire harness on the guy's waist. And he's doing the motion like he's doing this as they're pulling him up. But they went through the effort of trying to create that illusion, which is really cool. So, folks, until next time, where if it's just me and Josh, you will be Spider-Man. If not, then we'll be watching something else. I'm sure we have more of this in our future, more of Jetman. We're trying to save that one for when there's more people over. I know
because we have multiple people that are very invested in Jetman.
Yes.
So,
and I'm sure Sam wants to watch more of Akiba Ranger. So we do have that coming up too. So, folks, until next time, for your Topaz champion, Josh, I'm Mike. We'll see you next time on Denzicaster.